A monarch is on the rise in rebellion against Athens, and one brave soul decides to stand up against insurmountable odds and fight nobly for his Athenian people. This man was Demosthenes, and he went on to display heroic perseverance countless times throughout his life. So, I will show you the story of a man who stood courageously against the evils of his time and persevered through many of his own physical hardships. Demosthenes was born 384 years before Jesus. He was a Greek politician and statesman and writer in ancient Athens. At the young age of 7, when a boy needs his father most, he was abandoned, simply because he had a severe speech impediment and didn't reach the standards of a strong Athenian boy at his time. He was of no use to his father, so he was cast away. Demosthenes was then eventually adopted, but now in his teen years, he was tired of the mistreatment that he had endured most of his life, so he took it into his own hands to overcome. Demosthenes began practicing by standing on a cliff edge and shouting chants over the waves with pebbles in his mouth. He would also lock himself into a room and would not leave until he could perfectly recite some great work of literature. These here were just a few of the things that Demosthenes did to develop his speaking skills. Demosthenes was now a young adult, and he began to make public appearances in public. His first notable appearance was to take his father to court for abandoning him. To do this, Demosthenes had to write and present a bold and convincing case to the judges. It was through this court case presented that Demosthenes realized just how impactful one man's voice can be. This was the new Demosthenes, a man who had a bold voice, strong morals, and a spirit full of perseverance, ready to face all the evils of his home. Now I will tell you the story of the Macedonian revolt led by Philip II. Athens was the leader of all the surrounding states. They controlled all the ships that came in and out, and in general, they were the leading country for many materials. Then there was Philip II, who acted as a monarch of Macedonia. He was under the Athenian government during the time of Demosthenes' influence, but he wished to be the one in authority. Something welled within Philip that made him want to be at the top and run a one-man show. Philip began opposing the rulers of Athens because he hated their friendly form of government, democracy. How dare the people have a choice is how he ruled. But Demosthenes, being the new man that he was, had his own fire within himself to not let this rebellion succeed. He began speaking out publicly against Philip II to bring light to this new controversy and hopefully paint Philip II in a dishonorable light. His speeches began working for a time, but Philip was enraged. Years and years went by that felt like a constant tug of war. Neither Athens nor Macedonia was taking the lead. Then one day, word was brought to Demosthenes during this time that his one and only daughter was stricken with a severe illness and had passed. Demosthenes was broken, hurt, and angered. He felt as though he had failed as a father for not being there sooner and coming to her aid when she needed him most. It was too late. His daughter was gone. That spark of resilience that he once had seemed to have gone dim upon her death. He grieved her death in black robes for a time, and silence seemed to cloud his soul as dust collected on his papers. During this time of grieving, yet again another message was brought to Demosthenes. His heart had sank deeper. Given the first letter, Demosthenes felt anxious about whatever was to come. He opened the wax seal with quivering hands, feeling nervous about whatever was to come, and feeling as though the world was stripped from him and nothing could get worse. What could be any more devastating than to lose a dear loved one? So he opened the letter with great hesitation. But the letter read that Philip II had died, and their conflict was over. Demosthenes' heart began to beat faster as the man he had conflicted with for so many years was now supposedly dead. Feelings of confusion flooded him. Then a man came to Demosthenes' door the next day holding a white royal robe, inviting him to celebrate the death of the monarch and the end of their war. Demosthenes had had so much hurt and sadness from his daughter's passing, yet now a desire to celebrate, but he felt as though if he were to celebrate, he would be dishonoring his beloved child. Then the man at Demosthenes' door reminded him that he must remember a valuable lesson, that public and statesmanlike duties must come before that of private griefs. Demosthenes decided to listen to the man and realized himself that he had grieved his daughter's death long enough, and he couldn't do anything to bring her back. So he decided once again that when life got tough, he was to persevere. They held the celebration, and things began to seem a little less dim. He was finally able to rejoice that all of his hard work was put to the end, and a new leader was going to take charge of Macedonia, and hopefully one that Athens would be on good terms with. But this was not the case. The man in place to take over for Philip II was his own son, Alexander. He not only hoped to continue in his father's footsteps as a monarch, but also to advance and conquer beyond Macedonia. So yet again, a strict monarch was on the rise, and Alexander was not going to lose to anything. Demosthenes had tried for a time to continue his speeches, but after watching Alexander move with his swift army and even conquer the powerful city of Thebes, Athens was forced to surrender to Alexander. Demosthenes was then captured and thrown in prison. So here was the end of the great Athenian influence and the beginning of Alexander's conquest of the Persian Empire. So in conclusion, Demosthenes was a man who was battered with many hardships for the large portion of his life, and it was something that never really left him. Yet his character and willingness to stand up to the evils of his life of this time and persevere through them is something that we can all recognize. He didn't let his hardships consume him. He recognized them and was determined to get through them. So I exhort you today to remember Demosthenes and his courage to conquer his physical hardships. From a young age, in his older years, the death of his daughter, the loss to Alexander, and even to death. He had a desire to keep fighting for his Athenian people. As Christians, our lives are one of constant perseverance. Daily, we are tempted by sin and bound to the miseries of this life. So may we all have perseverance like Demosthenes, but look to the hope that is to come through Christ. Thank you.